Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well. And today I've got video number 2 of the day because obviously all of this news broke last night and I want to try and cover it as quickly as possible since what I do on this channel is indeed cover breaking stories, cover recent news, and sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle if you don't cover it right away because YouTube's algorithm sucks because YouTube obviously sucks. Today's video, of course, is brought to you by Ricola, which is trying to help my throat as I try and get through whatever funk I'm going through right now. My throat doesn't feel nearly as bad as it did this morning, but I figured I might as well get everything out while my throat is feeling okay. So as you see, Marvel Studios announces 3 new shows for their Disney Plus service: She-Hulk, Moon Knight, and Miss Marvel. Now, I think that a couple of these shows we can look at and say, okay, I think there's probably some genuine interest in. For example, people have been interested in a Moon Knight series for a long time. Now, of course, that it's been officially announced, there's some questions as to, are we going to get actual Moon Knight, or are we going to get some PG-13, PG version that probably won't live up to the actual comic? Now, I've made it very clear on the channel countless times that I am not a comic person. I do not know the comic lore. I really wish that I could. I wish that there was some type of movie or series of videos. Like, I really want to find a channel. And please recommend any if you have any in the comments below, especially on the pinned comment, because I tend to see more of those comments than anything else, just because lately these videos have been getting a lot of comments, and it sometimes gets hard to keep up with it all with everything else that's going on. And so please let me know if there's any websites or any YouTube channels that really go into good historical reviews of the actual comics themselves, going into all the key details that you might need to know, being someone that does not have the time or the energy or the attention span to be able to focus on actually reading through all the comics themselves. So anything would be a very, very big help. So Moon Knight, though, I've heard is a really awesome, badass character. I know that Jeremy over at Geeks and Gamers is extremely excited for this character, has been wanting this character to be on for a long time. Many of us thought and hoped that maybe it would be on a Hulu streaming service, since Hulu has the ability to kind of, get on the edge of what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. It's not known as a strictly family service, so that way they're able to have a little bit more adult content sometimes. But it is indeed now officially being put on the Disney Plus streaming service, which makes us have to ask that question: what kind of show is it going to be? Is it going to be a kid-friendly, family-friendly PG-13, or are they going to try and push the bounds of it? Are they going to try and split Disney Plus into different areas where you can have still the same service for the $7 a month, but you can access certain content if you're a certain age, or put parental restrictions? I mean, honestly, we don't know. These shows are very early in development, though, so we don't have to worry about this, or at least Disney doesn't have to worry about this for a while, and most of us aren't going to be watching the Disney Plus streaming service anyway, so if we are going to watch these shows, it's not really going to matter all that much either, allegedly, of course. Another show that I think some people are interested in is She-Hulk. I know that Gary over Nerdrotics personally loves the She-Hulk character. Apparently, it's a very interesting character. It's very well done. And he has said from the beginning that he would have loved to have seen She-Hulk earlier on in the MCU, even, and that she's a really cool character. So I'll take his word for it, because in Gary do I trust. And it seems that this would probably be a good show in general, though, of course, in the hands of Disney. Who honestly knows? And I think the big question mark here in all of this, even though it's not when you actually dive into the history of the character and who they got to write the character, is, of course, for Miss Marvel. Now, please know that this is not the traditional Miss Marvel. This is not the actual Miss Marvel. You want to know who the actual Miss Marvel was? That's when you go back to Carol Danvers, because before Carol Danvers became Captain Marvel, she, of course, was Miss Marvel, and there was nothing wrong with that. Over time, of course, she eventually becomes Captain Marvel, like we have over here. Ooh, she's Captain Marvel. Stupid. But now, of course, Miss Marvel is a woke character because she was the first Muslim female character to be a superhero who looks up to Captain Marvel. And if anyone's going to look up to Carol Danvers in the comics, and we know where her character has gone in the comics, and we know where it's going in the movies, that pretty much tells me all that I really need to know. But what's even more telling is the person that they chose as a showrunner for this, and to me, it speaks volumes. So let's actually go into the actual article here once again, at Bounding in the Comics, where it says Miss Marvel just announced at the D23 Expo. So the Miss Marvel show was reported earlier in the day, and will reportedly see frequent guests of the Guilty Feminist podcast and staff writer Bisha K. Ali. So not only do you have someone who is a guest on something called the Guilty Feminist, which just makes everyone excited, right? You also have her where she's got tweets, and if you want more information on this, and if you want to see some actual tweets that she has, go check out Jeremy's video on Geeks and Gamers that he did on this, because man, oh man, he calls her out. There's evidence out there, because apparently her Twitter is now on lockdown because she's got a lot of controversial tweets that are very anti-white, to put it one way or the other. It's interesting how you can be anti this, anti that if you're on the right side of the political spectrum, but as soon as you say anything that's even critical, not necessarily anti anyone, you get labeled as a racist, you get labeled as a sexist, you get labeled in a wide variety of ways, and of course, that's just the game that they end up playing. But she has many different tweets out there pointing out that she is not very fond of white people in general, and that she is, of course, not very fond of the President of the United States, and everyone is entitled to their opinion. It's just interesting to me that Disney always ends up choosing people of all the same political ideology, and not just of the same political ideology, but those who are very openly outspoken on social media, where you can find what they say about this or that. It's just, it'd be refreshing for once for them to choose a show like this. Like, it'd be refreshing if like Miss Marvel was chosen and they had a writer and a showrunner that was going to be behind it that was not controversial, that we could assume that, oh, they are on this side of the aisle, or we could assume that they feel this way or that, but we honestly really couldn't know. At least then we would have that specter of, hey, maybe it could be a great show. Maybe I am judging it a little too early. Maybe I could see it potentially going somewhere. But when you choose a character like Miss Marvel, who's already woken up in the comics because it's, of course, a part of this grander Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel universe, you also then add on to that, you have someone who's a part of the guilty feminist and someone who is known for saying some really terrible things online and is a so-called comedian, though, of course, comedy on the left is usually not comedy. And I think that Tim Pool over at the Timcast does a really great job of always breaking that down, saying, you know, the left does not know how to meme, the right does, and this is the guy himself who's more of a center, and I'm more of a centrist too, and so it is interesting that he even points out saying, you know, one side can do jokes very well, one other side can't, because it's really interesting that one side's jokes tend to be more just politically motivated and tend to be just more politically raw, and really aren't all that funny. I mean, just go ahead and look to any late night show where they're making jokes about the president or they're doing something. Most of them are just preaching, right? Most of them end up just preaching on a particular issue that they're passionate about, more so than actually telling jokes. That seems to be what this Ali woman is as well, where she's more interested in being political than actually being a comedian. So the fact that she's being attached to this does not give me high hopes for this character, which is already going to be questionable in the first place because of her background. And no, it's not because, oh my God, you just hate her because she's a female and she's Muslim. No, I could care less about that, right? I really honestly care less. But you want to know why it's important to talk about? Because that's how they sell her character. They sell her character as being the first this, the first that, instead of just being, hey, she's a great character. You know, you look at people like Moon Knight and you say, boom, awesome character with a great backstory. You look at people like She-Hulk, boom, awesome character with a backstory. And you look at Miss Marvel and you say, oh, this was a part of the Disney woke agenda, and did not come about naturally and did not come about with any real good backstory in the first place. So I think that that's something we're talking about. And also it seems to indicate the direction that Disney wants to take the Marvel Cinematic Universe, really even more so. And that's because of that what's got me concerned about the shows like She-Hulk and the shows like Moon Knight, right? That even though those shows seem to have much more of a reason to exist, even though those shows have a much more interesting backstory and those shows have characters that are just more popular in general, it seems that those are shows that could easily get affected by the politics of Disney. You know, Bob Iger has not made it a secret where he wants certain things to go. Kevin Feige has not made it a secret where he wants the future of the MCU to be. And I think that having these shows on the Disney Plus streaming service, and also them making it clear that they're bringing in movie characters onto the streaming service, that it's going to be a lot easier for them to eventually have more crossover events in the film world with characters they present here. So it seems like to me, they knew that a character like Miss Marvel would not be able to sell her own movie, would not be able to be successful in the movie theater. And so they said, okay, what we'll do instead is make hers a TV series on Disney Plus, so that way we can try and have that, you know, artificial growth. We could always have that, oh, well, look at all these people watching it, even though they don't show their numbers and they don't have to because they can hide all that stuff. And, oh, but look at all of our subscriptions and we know that it's a popular show, even though people might not actually be watching it, so that eventually they can try and justify it in their own minds that, oh, that's why we're bringing her into the movies, right? Oh, that's why, oh, because people like the fact that it's more diverse. We're trying to reach more audiences. And there's nothing wrong with trying to reach more diverse audiences. But the way that you do that, I think, is important. The way that you reach an audience is extremely important, because if I were just to force saying, boom, this is what I'm going to do. If I decided that this channel tomorrow was going to be every single time I talk, I am going to try and preach to you and explain to you why you should believe in the Catholic Church. You all know that I'm a Catholic. You all know that I'm very devout in my faith, but that would change the dynamic of the channel. That would put an agenda onto the channel. That would put an agenda, a very clear agenda that many people who are not Catholic would say, oh, whoa, hold on a second. So even though I'm not necessarily a bad person, even though I wouldn't necessarily be an evil person, I would be a person with an agenda, and many people will be turned off by it, and many people would start to reject it. And then there are some people out there that would look at that and say, oh, well, that's just anti-Christian of them to not watch this because this person happens to be an outspoken Catholic. And that kind of mindset is what's pervading Hollywood, right? Only it's different. Only it's race. Only it's different religious ideologies, because obviously Christianity is something that no one minds mocking and no one minds making fun of. in Hollywood or in politics in general, because Christians are, actually by fact, based on certain statistics, one of the most marginalized and one of the most criticized, not even just criticized, but most recently there was an article that came out talking about how Christians are the most, oh my goodness, I'm blanking out on air. This is the reason why I do it live, because then you can see that I'm not just going to do quick cuts to make myself sound smarter. I'm going to show you exactly how my thought process works. For some, I move a little bit too quickly. For others, I probably just sound a little bit too annoying and you'd rather me have a script, but that's just the way that I work. But they are the most persecuted. That's the word I'm looking for. There we go. You see, as I was speaking, I was trying to go through my mind. So they are the most persecuted religious class in the entire world, which makes a lot of sense when you realize how many people are killed just for being a Christian. But with that being said, I hope that example kind of shows you that, yeah, that would piss off a lot of people. And if I were then to turn it back on them by saying you're anti-Christian for not appreciating that, that would be wrong of me to do. In the same capacity, if you're going to push a show because you have a certain agenda, because you're trying to force characters, because you're saying these are the characters that you need to find important, and if you don't find these characters important, then that makes you this, that makes you an istophobe, as Gary over Nadrotic says, that to me is the biggest hypocrisy. That, to me, is the biggest issue that I have with all of this. If a character is well written, if a show is good, and it's able to just be a good show with a good character development, that's awesome. But what if a show is going to be motivated by and created, or a character is going to be motivated and created by a political ideology, and then that show or that comic is then going to be placed into the forefront on a Disney Plus streaming service or in a more wider context, with that being their mindset, and then them grabbing someone that is very much based in that mindset, and Bisha K. Ali, that just to me just indicates that, okay, if everything, if it smells like a duck, if it acts like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. It's probably not a cow, right? It just seems to me that all we're doing on YouTube, all we're doing on these channels, all we're doing is trying to follow the breadcrumbs, right? And trying to say, this is the reason why we feel the way that we do. And I started off this entire video by saying, Moonlight looks like it has potential. She-Hulk looks like she has potential. But then you go to here, where it's harder to make that argument. It's harder to not see the agenda. And when the agenda is just so exposed here, and then you start to follow those breadcrumbs back, you can see that these agendas could easily be influenced and could easily be a part of these other two shows, because it's infesting the entirety of the MCU at this point in time. But anyway, what are y'all's thoughts about this? Do you think that I give a fair analogy there about how if I just turn this into a Catholic show trying to preach Catholic ideology nonstop in these videos, that would probably turn some people off, and that if I were to criticize you saying, oh, you're anti-Christian, that would be unfair of me? I think that definitely would be, right? Because no one wants to preach to. When they're watching a video about movie news, you don't want to constantly be preached to about one thing over the other. Now, of course, some are going to say, well, didn't you just do that? No. At any point in there, did I try and explain to you why Jesus should be your Lord and Savior? No, of course not. I mean, you know that I believe this, right? You know that I feel this way. I teach it. I'm a teacher in high schools because I firmly believe it in my heart, and I could go off on rants about why I believe it and why it's important, but this is not the place for it, right? This is not the place for it. And if I did, I would have every right to do so, right? Just like they have every right to do so also. However, just as they have the right to push an agenda, they have the right to push these things in their films, audiences have every single right to openly reject it and to openly criticize it without being called an istophobe. That's my main point. But let me know your thoughts about this and all the things in the comments below. If you like this video, smash that like button, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.